The room was intense. Jungkook leaned back in his leather chair, the smoke from his cigarette curling into the air as he glared at his team. How did this happen? Why this negligence? He barked, his voice slicing through the heavy atmosphere. His piercing gaze shifted from one man to another, demanding answers. The young standing at the far end of the table adjusted his stance nervously. We failed to secure it near the Singapore coastline. Jungkook's jaw tightened. Singapore coastline. How is it possible? It's an easy line to cross, but you guys messed it there. His tone was filled with disbelief and anger. Jimin, standing next to Theon, hesitated before speaking. This time, a new officer was appointed. He was very strict and didn't agree to take any bribes, so we lost one container out of 5. Jungkook's eyes darkened as he exhaled another puff of smoke. If he doesn't accept anything, then you should have made him accept his death. Isn't it easy? Kyung and Jimin exchanged uneasy glances. Jungkook's wild thoughts and unpredictable behavior always left them speechless. I don't care what you had to do, Jungkook continued. His voice was like ice. Rick said. He was about to finish when the door to the meeting room swung open. You stepped in, holding a tray with breakfast boxes. I brought your favorite breakfast, you announced with a soft smile. Jungkook sighed in frustration, pushing his cigarette in the ashtray. How many times have I told you not to disturb me? Why are you always hating me? I said I hate you. Can't you hear me? Don't you understand? The room fell silent. Sam and Jimin looked at each other, unsure whether to intervene or stay quiet, but he only laughed lightly, unbothered by his harsh words. I know you would say this, he replied, placing the breakfast boxes on the table. And you know my answer, even though you hate me, I don't care because I love you. Your voice was calm but firm. Jungkook's expression remained cool, but his fingers were tapped rhythmically on the table, betraying his inner turmoil. Please have it before it cools down. You added with a small smile, turning to Jimin and Theon. You said, you can have some too. I'll text you, Jungkook. Until then, bye-bye. Without waiting for a response, he walked out of the meeting room, closing the door behind you. As soon as you left, your smile faded, and you sighed deeply. Tears pricked at your eyes, but you forced them back, determined not to let your emotions show. Inside the meeting room, the tension lingered. Jimin broke the silence. Why don't you just tell her strongly that you hate her? Jungkook remained silent, tapping his shoe against the floor. His gaze was unfocused, as if lost in thought. Taeyang crossed his arms and tilted his head. Do you perhaps love her? Jungkook's eyes flickered to the ceiling. Without answering, he grabbed one of the breakfast boxes and walked out, leaving Taeyang and Jimin more confused than ever. Your first meeting with Jungkook was vivid in your memory as if it had happened yesterday. It was your birthday and you had chosen to spend it at the park with a group of orphans. The sound of children's laughter filled the air as you played games and distributed cake. 6 months ago. The first time Jungkook saw you was at a park. It was a sunny afternoon and you were celebrating your birthday with a group of orphans. Balloons swayed gently in the breeze and your laughter echoed through the air as you handed out slices of cake to the children. Jungkook had been there for a brief meeting with an associate. As he passed by, he couldn't help but notice you. There was a warmth about you, a kindness in your eyes that seemed foreign to him. For a moment his usual stern expression softened. But then you walked up to him holding a piece of cake. Hi, I'm fine, he said brightly. Would you like some cake? Jungkook stared at you, his smile vanishing as he realized you were addressing him. No, he said curtly, turning away. You didn't seem bothered by his cold response. Instead, you tilted your head and smiled even wider. You're really handsome, you said bluntly. I think I love you. Jungkook froze. No one had ever said something so absurd to him. What? He asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. I love you, you repeated confidently, your eyes sparkling with sincerity. I don't know why, but I do. Jungkook let out a humorless laugh, shaking his head. You don't even know me, he said, stepping closer. His voice dropped to a low, threatening tone. Do you have any idea who I am? He nodded. You're Jungkook, the Mafia king. His eyes narrowed. Then you should know that I'm not someone you should love. I don't have time for foolish things like this. You shrugged, unfazed by his words. I don't care. My heart chose you. He looked at you, narrowing his eyebrows annoyingly, but I will never choose you. Jungkook's jaw tightened. Without another word, he turned and walked away. Getting into his sleek black car, as you drove off, he couldn't shake the image of your smile or the strange warmth it had brought him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. At present, back in the present, you wiped away a straight tear as you left Jungkook's mansion. The guards at the gate greeted you politely, but you barely noticed. Your heart ached, and it also felt full. Loving Jungkook was both the hardest and the most beautiful thing you would ever done. Meanwhile, Jungkook stood in his room, staring at the untouched breakfast box. His fingers brushed against the lid, but he didn't open it. Memories of your laughter, your persistence, and your unwearying love played in his mind. She's impossible, he muttered to himself, but his voice lacked conviction. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt a small pang of guilt every time he hurt you. He hated admitting it even to himself, but a part of him admired your courage. Downstairs, Taeyang and Jimin were still talking. Did you see that? Taeyang asked, leaning back in his chair. He took the breakfast box. That's not something he does when he is mad. True, Jimin replied, tapping his finger on the table. I have never seen him this conflicted before. She is different. Taeyang smirked. Wine is not afraid of him, that's for sure, and she's crazy enough to keep chasing him. Honestly, I kind of admire her. Jungkook appeared in the doorway, silencing them with his cold stare. If you're done with gossiping, get back to work. I don't pay to sit around and analyze my life. As the two scrambled to leave, Jungkook's phone buzzed. It was a text from you. Hope you like the breakfast. Take care, Jungkook. You might hate me, but I will always protect you. He clenched his jaw. Protect me? That was laughable. You didn't understand the dangers that surrounded him. The enemies lurking in every shadow. Only you know your own father, Mr. Kim, his fierce rival. It had been days since you last saw Jungkook, days since you last heard his voice, since you last received a response to your constant texts, your sweet gifts, and your relentless good morning and good night messages. Every word you sent seemed to bounce off him like they were nothing more than empty air. You had tried everything, every way to get him to notice you, to see that your love for him was real, even if he didn't believe it. Every time you sent him a gift, a bouquet of flowers, a box of his favorite pastries, it was as if he couldn't care less. The text messages you sent were read but never answered. You knew he was seeing them. He couldn't have missed them. But he still kept you at arm's length. His actions were cold, his actions colder, and his rejection stung with every breath you took. And you refused to give up. You couldn't. No matter how much Jungkook rejected you, no matter how much he claimed that he hated you, you would never stop loving him. That was the truth that lived deep inside you, the truth you refused to bury. One evening you found yourself standing outside his mansion, staring up at the grand gates. You knew his location from the secret informants your father had used for years. You knew where to find him, even if he never wanted to see you again. It wasn't easy to approach him. Every time you got close, he would dismiss you or shout at you in that harsh tone of his. But you kept trying, and each rejection only fueled your determination more. You are not going to stop, not when you are so sure of your feelings for him. You knew what he was thinking. He saw you as his enemy's daughter, someone who would betray him in the end. He believed you were using him to get inside information about his operations, but he couldn't be further from the truth. You weren't like a father. You didn't want to steal from him or hurt him. All you wanted was him, his heart, his love. But Jungkook was stubborn, and it seemed as though nothing would ever get through to him. Jungkook was in the middle of a serious discussion with his guards, the room tense and filled with hushed voices as they planned their next move. The door to his office creaked open, and suddenly you were standing there holding the gift, your eyes locked onto his. The room fell silent. Jungkook's cold, piercing gaze flickered toward you, and his lips pressed into a thin line. His jaw tightened with irritation, and his expression was one of pure annoyance. "What are you doing here, Ryan?" he asked harshly, his voice carrying the weight of his anger. "I told you, stay away from me." Your heart skipped a beat, but you didn't let it show. He smiled softly, though you felt the sting of his rejection. "I brought you a gift," you said gently, placing the flowers on the table. "I thought you might like them." Jungkook stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a sharp sound. He looked at you as if you were the last person he wanted to say. "I don't want your damn gifts," he spat. "I told you to never come here again. Do you understand? I don't need you. You are my enemy's daughter. You don't belong here." The pain of his words hit you like a physical blow, but you held back the tears. You couldn't let him see you break. "I'm not my father, Jungkook," you whispered, your voice trembling. "I'm not like him. I'm here because I care about you, because I love you." He sneered at you, his eyes filled with disdain. "Love? You think I don't know what you are trying to do? You're here to play me, to use me. I'm not a fool, Wine." His voice cracked like thunder in the tense silence of the room. "You are playing a dangerous game, but I don't care. I told you, stay out of my way." You stood there, unable to speak, the weight of his rejection almost suffocating. You had come here with so much hope, with so much love in your heart, and all he gave you was hatred and coldness. With a heavy heart, you turned to leave, walking out of the room as quickly as your legs could carry you. But as soon as you closed the door behind you, the tears you had been holding back finally began to fall. The hurt was unbearable, but you couldn't stop. This pain, this love, it was all part of the battle, the war you fought with your own heart every single day. Few days passed. Jungkook didn't get any message, any call, or any gift. He didn't know what was happening to him, but surely he was feeling sad and guilty for hurting you. He was having daydreams about your smile, about the way you cared him, but now everything felt like a dark to him. He was not concentrating on his work. After a week, Jungkook, with your soft voice, Jungkook, who was in the park, turned to you. You found him at the park where you had first met. It was a peaceful place, and it was there that you had first confessed your feelings to him. It was there that he had rejected you so coldly, leaving you alone in the crowd, but now it was just the two of you, alone in the evening quiet. When you approached him, he looked up at you, and for a moment his expression faltered. It was as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. His voice shook as he spoke, the words coming out more slowly, more cautiously than usual. You? Jungkook stared at you as if you were a dream, as if you weren't really standing there. You're here again after everything I said. You are still here. You smiled at him though your heart was heavy. Did you really think I would leave you forever, Jungkook? Not bad. You missed me, huh? He blinked, his hands clenching at his sides. He looked so conflicted, so torn. For a brief moment, you could see the love he was hiding, the love he had buried deep inside. Jungkook's chest heaved with emotion, and before he could stop himself, he reached out and pulled you into an embrace, his arms wrapped around you tightly, as though afraid that if he let go, you might vanish. His breath came in uneven gasps, and you could feel the tears pressing against his eyelids. I have been seeing you from 2 days. I know you are not real, but I missed you while. He whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. I didn't know how much until now. I didn't know what it was like to be without you. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. You closed your eyes, letting yourself melt into his arms, finally feeling the warmth of his love, but just as quickly as the moment had come, it was gone. Jungkook suddenly pushed you away, his eyes hardening again. He realized it was not his dream. You really came to him. What are you doing here? His voice was cold again, the distance between you growing with every passing second. I told you to get lost. Why did you come back? You stepped back, your heart sinking, but you refused to let him push you away again. Did you think I would just disappear? Did you think I would leave you forever? You asked. Your voice is soft but steady. Not bad, Jungkook. You missed me, didn't you? You hide so much love, but you can't keep it from me. Show it, Jungkook. You're not fooling anyone. Jungkook's face turned pale, his expression betraying the emotional battle he was fighting inside. He clenched his fist, his knuckles white. I told you, he swallowed hard. I told you, I don't like you. Stay out of my life. Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving you standing in the park where it all began. His car roared to life, and within seconds he was gone, leaving you alone once more. But this time you didn't feel defeated. This time you knew that no matter how hard he pushed you away, you wouldn't give up. Not now, not ever. After a month, Jungkook stood still, the tension in the air thick with mistrust. He had just received some disturbing information, a warning that you were lying to him. A message from Antheon advised him to be cautious of everything you said, to question your intentions. It felt like a stab to the chest. After everything, all the gifts, the tests, the love you had shown him, someone was trying to poison his thoughts against you, and as much as he wanted to believe you, that voice of doubt lingered in his mind. Don't believe her, Jungkook. She is lying to you. She is trying to betray you, just like her father. The words echoed in his mind, making him hesitate. The temptation to ignore the warning was strong, but the fear of being deceived gnawed at him. But despite all that, he couldn't shake the feeling of wanting to protect you. Maybe it was foolish, but he couldn't help it. You were different. You had always been different from everyone else in his life. Then his phone buzzed again. It was a text from you. His eyes scanned the words frantically. Jungkook, don't go to that place. My father has set a trap for you. He plans to kill you there. You have to go to another location. Please trust me. Please, I'm begging you. The message made his heart race. He knew the place you were warning him about. It was a dark, secluded warehouse where he was supposed to confront one of his enemies. It was a trap. Your father had orchestrated this whole thing, trying to take him out, but still, something inside Jungkook told him to be cautious. Could you really be telling the truth? Could you really care for him after all this time? But no, he couldn't just turn his back on what he believed was right. He couldn't allow you to deceive him again, so, despite your warning, Jungkook chose to follow through with his plan. He believed the warning wasn't coming from you but from his enemies making you tell it, but he was wrong. When he arrived at the warehouse, his worst fears were realized. It was a trap, just like you said. The guards were already waiting for him, their eyes cold and merciless. They grabbed him quickly, locking him in a small room far away from any escape. The harsh sound of metal bars clanging echoed through the cool space. He struggled against them, but they overpowered him, binding his arms and dragging him into the main hall where your father stood. The sight of him made Jungkook's blood boil. Your father, the man who had always been an enemy, now stood in front of him, a dark smile playing on his lips. Jungkook glared at him, refusing to show any fear. I know you don't trust my daughter, your father said, his voice dripping with malice. You think she is lying to you? But she doesn't know, does she? She doesn't know that her love is about to be killed today. Jungkook's heart pounded in his chest, but he refused to show fear. He stared defiantly at your father, his jaw clenched, ready to face whatever came next. I'm not afraid of you, Jungkook spat. You won't get away with this. That's alright. I want your kingdom, your power, not the fear in your eyes. Even though you try to fight with us, you know you cannot win with us. He pointed at his hundreds of guards who held. Your father scoffed, walking toward him with deliberate steps. He pulled out a gun, the cold steel gleaming under the dim light. Jungkook's breath quickened, but he stood tall. This wasn't the first time he had faced death. It wouldn't be the last. You will die here, Jungkook. This is the end of your story, your father said, his voice filled with reality. Jungkook didn't flinch. He wasn't afraid. If this was the way it was going to end, then so be it. He had lived his life on his own terms, but just as your father was about to pull the trigger, there was a sudden, unexpected movement, a blur that caught your eye. In an instant, you were there in front of him. Jungkook's heart stopped. Before he could even comprehend what was happening, you had thrown yourself in between him and your father's gun. Time seemed to slow down as the bullet was fired. It was a blur of silver. The world went quiet. The sound of the gunshot was deafening, but what came next was even worse. You crumpled to the ground, your body falling limp, staining your clothes. Your father stood there in shock, realizing what had just happened. His heart stopped for a second as he looked down at you, his thoughts spiraling into confusion, anger, and pure disbelief. Ryan! Jungkook screamed, his voice raw with panic. He lunged forward, struggling against the guards who were still holding him. His voice cracked as he finally broke free, falling to his knees beside you. He cradled your head in his hands, tears staining his palms, as he desperately tried to stop them. No, please, Mohan, don't do this, please. His voice was a broken whisper, the weight of what had just happened crashing down on him. You open your eyes just slightly, your face pale as you looked at him, Jungkook. You whispered, your voice barely audible. Will you believe me now? Tears streamed down his face as he looked into your eyes, his heart breaking. I should have trusted you. I was so stupid, Ryan. I was so stupid to doubt you. I'm so sorry. Please don't leave me. Please. You smiled faintly, a soft, bittersweet smile that only made his heart ache. I love you, Jungkook. I love you more than myself. And then everything went dark. You slipped into unconsciousness, your body limp in his arms. Jungkook held you tighter, his body trembling with fear, the pain in his chest overwhelming. Ryan, he cried, shaking you gently, but there was no response. Suddenly the guards moved in, dragging him away from you, but he fought them off, desperate to stay by your side. No, don't take her, he screamed, but they pulled him away, his hands slick with air, and a silver chain with heart pendant. Your father watched from the corner, his face filled with shock, but it was too late. The damage had been done. Jungkook collapsed to his knees, his heart breaking, as he saw your body being carried away by the guards. He reached out, his hands trembling, covered. His eyes were wide, lifeless, as he stared at the stain on his hands. His eyes widened when he looked at chain which was falling from your neck. He immediately looked at you as it disappeared. This chain. It was then that Jungkook realized how much he truly loved you, how much he had been blind to his own feelings, how much he had pushed you away when you had only wanted to love him, but now it might be too late. He might have lost you forever. Few images were flashing in front of his eyes, making him feel more sad, and his pain was increasing with each memory he buried deep down. Then he screamed, Ryan. Thank you for watching.